Thank you for being here. My name is Girstin K. Bergquist. I'm a certified trauma counselor working closely with both victims and perpetrators. I do systems advocacy, and I am also a PsyD candidate. This presentation is deeply personal. I've lived through the trauma I now help others navigate. Today we'll explore how domestic violence intersects with child welfare systems, dependency court, and the laws meant to protect us, but often cause harm instead. I would like to start by grounding this conversation in lived reality, my reality. I have survived domestic violence and intimate partner abuse. I have been re-traumatized by systems meant to protect us. I've navigated the Department of Children and Family Services and the juvenile dependency court system while fearing for my safety and the safety of my children. I bring both personal and professional knowledge because healing and reform require both. Domestic violence isn't just physical, it's about control. Whether it's through manipulation, isolation, threats, financial abuse, or reproductive coercion. Survivors often make impossible decisions to stay safe, especially when children are involved. And those decisions are frequently misunderstood by child welfare professionals. This is the power and control wheel. This model illustrates how abusers maintain control. Two parts are especially relevant here: using children, like threatening to take them or undermine parenting, and using systems, like filing false reports to DCFS. These tactics aren't just threats, they often work because the systems respond in ways that punish survivors. Let's talk about the broader social context that shapes domestic violence and how systems respond to it. First, gender roles. From a young age, we're conditioned to accept power imbalances. Men are expected to lead, control, and provide, while women are often expected to accommodate, nurture, and stay. These roles normalize dominance and submission, and they silence survivors when that imbalance becomes violent. Then we have generational trauma. Many survivors were raised in homes where violence was the norm or where emotional abuse was minimized. Without intervention, this trauma gets passed down, sometimes through parenting and sometimes through how we learn to love and survive. Socialization matters. Boys are taught not to cry, girls are told to be polite, even when they're scared. We internalize these ideas about whose pain matters, who gets believed, and who gets blamed. These ideas don't just affect individuals, they shape how professionals in law enforcement, child welfare, and courts interpret behavior. That's why a trauma-informed approach is not just helpful, it is essential. When systems understand how trauma affects behavior, survival strategies, and trust, they can shift from blaming to supporting. Trauma-informed care asks, what happened to you, instead of what's wrong with you. And that shift can be the difference between recovery and re-traumatization. System entrapment is what happens when the very institutions that are supposed to protect survivors, like child welfare services, family or dependency courts, and law enforcement, end up reinforcing the abuser's power. It's when the survivor tries to reach out for help, but instead is blamed, investigated, or punished for the abuse they have endured. In my own experience, I wasn't just trying to escape the violence at home. I was also trying to survive the violence in the system. My abuser threatened to call DCFS, and when he did, they listened to him instead of me. System entrapment means survivors are navigating two layers of coercion, one from the abuser and one from institutions. We're forced to prove we're safe. We're forced to prove that we're good parents, stable people, and reliable witnesses, all while actively healing from trauma. whether that is physical or emotional. That's what makes system entrapment so dangerous. It silences, isolates, and re traumatizes survivors, and it makes people afraid to seek help ever again. In my case, my abuser threatened me with DCFS multiple times. He said, if you go to the police, your children will be put in foster care. He made good on that threat. He painted me as unstable, if not dangerous, and the system believed him. This is a common tactic in coercive control, and it's devastating. Survivors stay silent not out of weakness, but because of real fear. Mandated reporters, social workers, teachers, doctors, they often mean well, but when they don't understand domestic violence, their reports can cause harm. Survivors are punished for failing to protect, even when they're doing everything they can to survive and shield their children. These reports can re-traumatize, isolate, and dismantle families. Child welfare's goal is safety, but its approach often lacks nuance. The system may misread survivors' trauma responses as instability or danger. Instead of supporting protective parents, they remove children or launch invasive investigations. The abuser's behavior is overshadowed by the survivor's coping mechanisms. I went through it all. I was trying to survive. I was trying to physically heal. I was trying to emotionally heal. I was also trying to continue to work, all while being a good mother. But I was judged by people who didn't understand trauma. I was forced to prove I wasn't a risk while healing from this abuse. And like many others, I found the court system re-traumatizing rather than restorative. Dependency court decides whether a child stays in a home or is removed. These courts see DV frequently, but often lack training in how coercive control affects survivors and children. Survivors are expected to meet impossible standards under trauma and surveillance. It's not justice, it's survival within a system. Laws like the Adoption and Safe Families Act were meant to protect children, but they often punish parents in crisis. California has made some progress, while Senate Bill 1141 recognizes coercive control, and Senate Bill 654 mandates that DV be considered in custody decisions. But we still need federal protections against weaponized CPS reports and legal abuse. I have worked with the California Partnership to End Domestic Violence and State Senator Susan Rubio to change these laws. Survivors know what needs to change. We've lived it. And policy must reflect our realities, not stereotypes. And systems must stop treating DV survivors as offenders. Black, brown, disabled, low-income, and LGBTQ survivors are even more likely to be criminalized by CPS. These systems carry generations of racialized bias and cultural misunderstanding. We can't reform domestic violence response without also addressing these systemic inequities. But what if child welfare actually supported survivors? What if instead of punishing, it asked, how can we help? A trauma-informed approach would also focus on safety planning, not surveillance, on healing and not proving worth, and on preserving safe bonds, not disrupting them. Domestic violence is about power, and systems too often become another tool of control. Survivors need safety, not suspicion. We need systems that protect without punishing, and we need professionals who see our full humanity, not just a case file. If you work in child welfare or domestic violence advocacy, push for better training. If you're in law or policy, Fight for survivor protections. And if you're a community member, believe survivors. We're not just victims. We are experts, advocates, and change makers. Here are some resources I recommend. California Partnership to End Domestic Violence is a key ally in California policy reform, and the National DV Hotline can connect survivors to safety. There are also legal and mental health resources listed here, and if you'd like to connect professionally, please feel free to reach out. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Now we will open this up for the Q&A.